Hey everyone, welcome back to the Peak Human Podcast. I just got finished recording with Dr. Sean O'Mara, and it was so awesome, but I realized Zoom was not recording my side of the screen, so you will not see me in this interview, but you'll see all of Dr. Sean's great graphics. We talked about visceral fat and how important it is, and we get to see his MRIs, and this is really huge because you don't get to see this type of stuff usually, and it can really tell a visual picture of what's going on. And a lot of people think they're healthy, even vegan doctors, even guys that run 50 miles a week and that appear to be thin. But when you look on the inside, they have visceral fat. And this is really telling. This is not a good thing. And this causes disease. So you should check out this episode. Let me share my screen so I can show you what we're doing at nosetotale.org. We have our new products. We have our seasoning blends, beef tallow body care, our South African dried beef snack, which is way better than beef jerky. And here's some hats too. So our beef boxes are grass-fed, grass-finished. You can have them delivered to you. You can make your own box, or you can add your own items. We have the high omega-3, low omega-6 pork. We have buffalo. We also have a special diet for our chicken, which makes them high omega-3, low omega-6. So get that. You can also check out our biltong, which is our new product, which is really awesome. Biltong is way better than beef jerky. So beef jerky is dry and it's heated at a high temperature for a short amount of time. Biltong is the opposite. It uses no sugar and it's slowly air dried, right? So it's for 7 days. We leave it out. I use a South African guy and he uses the same methods they use in South Africa, here in America. We have our seasonings, which all are no sugar. They all are super good. I made them. Took me forever. Great guys I make them with. No sugar, no fillers, nothing else like that. We got these hats. I'm really happy with these. I think they're really cool. Got the nose to tail hat, or just a steak. Got 2 steak hats. And then last thing is the body care products made from beef tallow. This is really great stuff. I did a whole episode on all of these products. If you go back one episode and you can listen to the guys I make them with. And beef tallow is what you want on your skin. You don't want chemicals. You don't want plant oils. You don't want any of that trash. You want beef tallow. This is the original soap that we use. We also have sapien.org. This is Dr. Gary and I. And we have the Sapien Tribe, where a lot of members, we have extra content for them. We get bonus episodes of this podcast. We also have the Sapien Diet and Lifestyle Program, where we have a 10-week course. And if you're serious about losing weight and making changes, we got your back. We have health coaching. We have it all. And we have a special offer. So that's all. That's it. On to the show. Please enjoy Dr. Sean O'Mara. All right. We're back with Dr. Sean O'Mara. We're back for part 2. Part 1 was so awesome. We kind of left off saying that we'd come back again. And it's been a few months, but welcome back.
Good to be back, Brian. Really excited to once again be with you and your podcast audience.
Absolutely. People love the first one. We're recording this on Zoom. So if people want to watch it on YouTube, you can see all the graphics. We're going to pull up some great graphics, some MRIs of the visceral fat and some people's faces. It's going to be really, really good. So make sure to watch on the Food Lies YouTube. All right. So before we start, we can recap everyone on last time. Just let people know who you are, what you do, that kind of thing.
Okay. So I'm a health and performance optimizing physician. I originally trained in emergency medicine, actually through the Army. And I got a scholarship through medical school, courtesy of the Army. But after practicing emergency medicine for about 18 years, I made a shift to go into what I call health and performance optimization based on experience with a particular super healthy individual. And he sort of directed me towards a diet to become more healthy. So I segued into health and performance optimizing physician out of a love and interest for both research and clinical care, helping people to truly get better instead of just treating their disease process. So now I practice in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I practice within a medical practice within the state of Minnesota, but I can also practice with other individuals in other states by basically coaching them. So I really enjoy working with people today that are interested in optimizing their health, in particular, highly motivated people, because my passion is to try to get as many people as healthy as I possibly can while I'm here and present and alive. And so I'm looking for influencers, people that, one, really want to improve themselves, and two, share a passion to want to share that ideal for optimizing their health with other people. So that's why I'm talking to you, Brian. You're a kindred spirit. You're what I would call an alpha who really wants to be as healthy as possible. And you also want your audience and your followers to get as healthy as possible.
Absolutely. The first time we talked about you working with leaders and business leaders and influencers, anyone who needs to be, like you said, the alpha, the leader, the wolf pack leader. People want to follow people that look healthy and good. And that's what we talked about the first episode. You talked about when you were wandering around as hunter-gatherers and you see another tribe, and if this other tribe member was fat and sick, you're not necessarily going to want to go join them. But if they look amazing and they're good at hunting and all these things, there's these visual cues that we have. So I guess recap that really quick too. I don't want to redo our whole episode because people really need to go back and listen to that.
Well, I think the point to make on this is if we could, transport ourselves back, 30,000 years, we would just be so embarrassed about our appearance and our low performance relative to our ancestors of old, who would have enjoyed optimized health by virtue of their perfect lifestyle, and and explain away all the disease that we have. We suffer both in appearance and performance. So real quickly, it's really important that visual cues give an idea about how well somebody's living their life. And today we're moving completely away from it. But back then, it was important to make decisions about who got to join your clan or your tribe, or, if your tribe or clan became very lazy and weren't out hunting and spent too much time eating dates and figs and sitting around rather than going out and living an awesome lifestyle, then you'd be out looking for a new clan or tribe to join and be a part of. So it's those visual cues on how people look that first give us an idea about how well they're living their life, and then secondly, how well they perform. So you can't perform. You can't be a really bad performer if you look really good, and you can't be a really great performer if you look really bad. The two go hand in hand. So the next step would be to go out and do some awesome things, some hunting, and you see how good those people are. So that's kind of a recap of what we discussed last time, but it applies to modern day living today. I think my clients that are most interested in being the best version of themselves as possible and to influence, most effectively the most number of people, I try to get them to improve their performance and improve their appearance. And that comes through optimizing their health, optimizing the condition of their body. So my simplest definition of health is a combination of appearance and a combination of performance. And when it comes down to it, what else really would matter to you when it comes to how healthy you are, but how you look and how you perform.
Absolutely. And one more thing that stuck out to me from the last one is this idea of LDL, or tracking cholesterol. What if we never tracked cholesterol and we just went off? We never had this idea of cholesterol being bad, because cholesterol is a necessary, vital hormone, part of our body and all this stuff. And we just went based on how you look and feel. We could know a lot more. I mean, actually, the more you look into the science, LDL is not a great marker. That it doesn't correlate well with disease. Actually, it's all over the place now that we have done more studies, or we're looking back at some old studies. So really, humans look to how we feel and how we perform, and that's what matters.
No, it really is the case. I think I'm very fond of going after cholesterol as a marker that is used by conventional healthcare mostly, in my opinion, because it generates so much wealth and it's something that can be tracked easily. But it, from a research standpoint, if you're looking, at what's called the signal to noise ratio, where signal is the truest signal, what really matters for something that you're looking at and trying to achieve, and noise is distracting, then the signal to noise ratio of cholesterol is really poor. I mean, it just, as you mentioned in your comments about cholesterol, there's a lot of noise in there, because we see the lower studies that show that the lower your cholesterol level, the higher your mortality when it comes to a cardiovascular event. So, if you're trying to use that as a marker to build health by lowering your cholesterol, it is also increasing mortality at the same time. And it's largely because it's a natural substance that your body makes. Most of the cholesterol in your body is, in fact, made by your body rather than through dietary acquisition, and is used for critical substances like cell membranes and myelin sheaths and nerve cells. And so it's a critical substance. So, trying to focus in on that to eliminate it is going to give you a mixed picture. So what you measure as an objective of your health is critically important. So that's why I like to focus on the appearance, and that would include what I call key biological indicators, things on the body that, and in some cases inside the body, like visceral fat, that you can track that have a pure signal to noise ratio, that, in other words, represent a closer connection to what you're trying to achieve than distracting information, which we call noise. So cholesterol is bad, but there are better biomarkers that we should be following. And one of the first ones that I keyed in on in my research was visceral fat. And then in paying attention to visceral fat is eliminated, I saw these changes on people's bodies, their faces, their skin, spider veins, their regular veins, their arteries, the shapes of their tissue, musculoskeletal outlines. And so they became the basis for a lot of important biomarkers and biometrics that I now use pretty readily with my clients to help educate them on what they should be paying attention to instead of cholesterol.
Yes. And you said cholesterol is bad. Cholesterol is a bad marker. It's a bad way that we should look at. We know that cholesterol isn't bad. I just want to clear that up, because you kind of said that in passing. But visceral fat is this amazing thing that you can't lie or cheat your way through it. It's just what it is, right? If we know that if you're of normal weight, of normal body composition, has a way better health. You have a way better chance of living longer. But not only that, but some people can look like they're of normal weight, we'll call it, but they're not, because inside they have visceral fat. So this is kind of this marker that doesn't lie. It doesn't have this noise, and it's amazing. And we'll get into the images later, and we'll show, someone who thought they were healthy and see what they look like on the inside. Great. But I want to get back to the hunter-gatherer type of thing, because we always talk about aging. Well, when I talk to you, we talk about how people in society these days who are old, we don't respect them anymore. And that's what would have happened for all of history, is these people who were old were the leaders of the tribe. They were wise elders that had a lot of experience, and we trusted them and we looked up to them. And these days that doesn't happen so much. And so you have a really interesting theory about that.
Yeah, so I think that's really important. And it is very much the case, even just in our own generations. And when I was a younger kid, and certainly when my parents, they're both passed away now, but when they were younger, they were all trained and brought up to revere the elderly. And the difference today, Brian, that I've shared with many people is the elderly are so low performing. So the two things that are important to health is your appearance and your performance. And in both cases with the elderly today, they look bad and they perform low because they're so unhealthy. They're so filled with chronic disease, because never in the history of humanity have we seen more chronic disease present in the average individual, and to include especially the elderly. The elderly of the past, particularly the ancestors that you referred to, such as clan chiefs and tribal chiefs, when they were older, still looked good and they still performed well. And they had this gray hair about them that would have given them immediate identification as somebody that's got a lot of experience and we're going to want to pay attention to. But the minute you accompany that gray hair with bad appearance and low performance, then people dismiss them. So the elderly today, unfortunately, are in nursing homes, senior care centers, we call them, and people don't really like to visit them. It's just kind of they go notionally, but they certainly are not at their bedside clinging to every word that they're saying and applying in their lives the way nature would like that. Because as you mentioned before, there's a huge amount of accumulated knowledge vested within the elderly by virtue of their years. But the younger generation dismiss this now because of biology. So when they look at them, they see a lot of disease and they see low performance. And so their biology, their software in their brain is saying, dismiss, don't pay attention to. And the same thing is happening to people in middle age that are unhealthy and low performing. If you wonder why you can't quite influence people the way you want to, take a look at your health and start trying to improve your health, and you'll be a better influencer because your appearance will be better and you'll be performing better. So those are some simple truths, and they're probably the case of the elderly is the best example of where appearance and performance is really degraded in modern times. But again, in the past, that wasn't the case, and that's why we revered the elderly.
Even in the recent past, just a few generations ago, or even one generation ago, you would respect your elders, and they were healthier and stronger. And now our new generation has just rapidly gone downhill. So maybe you could talk about why they've gone so downhill, and their diet is just so poor. I mean, the elderly need protein the most, and I hear so many stories of these people. They're telling their grandma, their grandpa, they're eating, just plant-based diets. They're eating just oatmeal. They're not getting the right food.
That's exactly right. So in the past, 20 to 30 years, we've had the introduction of processed foods that has afflicted the present day elderly, and it's present in all of our lives. So for those of us who are not yet in our 70s and 80 years of age, we haven't had the same length of exposure to the poor dietary changes and transitions that modern day Homo sapiens have been experiencing. But be assured, there is nothing special about you, if you're listening, that if you're eating that same crappy food, that you're going to look any less worse or be any less bad performing than the elderly today if you're eating a poor diet. So it goes beyond just diet. It's your lifestyle as well. And that's why I really enjoy your podcast, Brian, and your content, because you get into other things. But it starts with diet. It's absolutely paramount. And if we can just get people to understand that your body is your single most important physical asset that you've been given and ever will be given. Nothing, you could fill a warehouse of diamonds, gold, whatever you want, is going to compare in value to you than your body. And if you lived your life and made decisions about what you ate and how you lived your life based on that awareness, you'd be making very different decisions in most cases than what you are today. So that's what I start with people, to get them to understand, hey, wake up, take a look at that body and realize it's absolute miracle, and you're not going to be given any other bodies. This is the one you get. So take care of it.
Health is wealth. So what would you say? What type of diets do you put people on?
So typically I start right away with a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet, and I introduce people to some cases people are still kind of paleo-esque. I get them quickly into valuing, understanding a dependency upon a wavering or turning away from carbohydrates and get them more into the ketogenic realm, and using and exploiting the value of ketones in a ketogenic state, and getting them off a dependency upon carbohydrates. And really, I'd like to initially get them started. And so far, all my clients that have worked with me have been willing to do this, and at least in the past year, is to start them on the carnivore diet, because in my opinion, it's the ultimate elimination diet. So you get off everything. You're just eating what fundamentally has been for the longest part of our existence, the highest and most nutritiously dense food out there, and that is meat. And then consider perhaps with time adding back in some other forms of food. Now, along the way, I also encourage my clients to eat fermented foods. So fermented animal products such as kefir and yogurt, cheeses, those work well, and I think pair nicely with a carnivore diet. Less probably understood or embraced by a lot of modern day carnivore diet enthusiasts today would be fermented vegetables. But I think fermented vegetables pair very nicely. And I would go so far as to say that they play an important role to our health because of the concomitant addition of microbes, beneficial microbes that come in with these fermented vegetables that assist with not only digestion and better nutrition, but ultimately improving our immunity, improving our overall physiology and our very lives. So I think fermented vegetables and fermented foods and meats are the staple of a good, healthy diet, along with timing decisions in terms of fasting. I like to do basically one meal a day, and I like to do at least a couple days of extended fasting a week for 48 hours. And about every other week, I will increase that sometimes to 3 or 4 days, and to get some extended fasting in. So I think fasting and eating the right foods, but most importantly, it's eliminating the bad foods, all processed foods. So that if you continue to eat all the healthy food you think is healthy, and maybe in fact is healthy, but you're eating processed foods, you're shoveling sand against the tide. You're just not going to achieve a level of any kind of meaningful health.
Yeah, that's huge. It's all good diets is what you leave out, really. That's the first step in why so many good diets work. And it's confusing to people. Why does this diet work? Why does this diet work? They're so different. Well, no, they're just cutting out a lot of the really bad processed foods. And then I love the fermented stuff. People listening know I'm always into the fermented vegetables. But what we're talking about is, okay, throughout history, if it was freezing cold, we had ice ages, we lived in northern climates, for 6 months of the year, all we really had access to would be animal foods and fermented foods. We'd save foods. We understood how to save them and preserve things. So we'd have, some dried things, some preserved things. And this is what we had access to. And we got a lot of great nutrition from it, and we lived well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with fermented vegetables. When I was soldier stationed in Korea, we would go into these traditional Korean restaurants, and the waitresses there were called, basically older kind of Korean women. They would serve you a meat dish with fermented vegetables, and the fermented vegetables were actually provided to you first prior to the meat. And Americans, we don't eat fermented vegetables, kind of traditional food of a lot of different cultures, particularly in the Middle East. And these women would get so mad. We couldn't speak a lick of Korean. They couldn't speak English. But you could tell they'd be super mad if you ate that meat without those fermented vegetables. I was like, get over it. This wouldn't happen in America. But you see, it was a tradition. And those women were raised from the age of birth, that fermented vegetables were absolutely essential to their health, and that you had to consume them whenever you ate meat. And so it's really important. I get my clients to not eat meat without eating fermented vegetables and other fermented foods, so that they have the benefit of these additional microbes. And it's absolutely imperative. I have people, what I like to say, graze on microbes by eating just very, very small quantities, even watered down quantities of fermented vegetables throughout the day so that they have those beneficial microbes going into them. Not really calories. I mean, you have to think about fermented foods from the standpoint, it's sort of like just bacteria. It doesn't take a lot for it to have an effect. You can just touch the surface. Same thing with fermented foods.
Well, if you do the math, if you do the math on it, you can be 95% animal based and eat a bunch of fermented foods because they're so low in calorie. Look at a jar of sauerkraut; it's like 10 calories for a serving or something.
Yeah, that was exactly right. So I don't even think of it, Brian, as food. I really think of them as microbes. So it's the way that I add the army, good allies to my body. And I introduce these allies all the time into my body because, we're basically at war, between the good guys and the bad guys. So beneficial microbes that improve and optimize our appearance, our performance, and our health. I mean, these microbes literally, I believe, will be shown in the future to improve human performance. And in the future, we'll be taking microbes that are specifically identified for that and putting them inside our bodies and our diet, and also putting them on our skin. And that's why athletes, high five each other. When you see an athlete do something awesome, they chest bump each other. They're harvesting microbes that contact with them. And if you go into any stadium arena, you see fans stretching their hands out to touch the hands of awesome players going by. Not mediocre players, but the very best, because nature tells them to have that contact, get those microbes. So we're really oriented towards trying to get the most amount of good microbes, hanging with awesome people, as getting that contact with awesome people. And then the cringeworthy ones that are low performers are really filled with disease. We want to retract and recoil from being there. So I think it's absolutely imperative that you start thinking about fermented foods from the standpoint of them being microbes and not so much caloric content for you.
I love this stuff about the microbiome on your body and the halobiome, whatever you call it. I had a great podcast with Karan Krishnan that a lot of people enjoyed, and he talked about this stuff, how your environment around you, just even who you live with, you get their microbiome from that and all the people you come in contact with. And it does make sense that this is why we develop these practices of high-fiving. I love that.
You're exactly right. We talked about the last podcast too, that I was noticing sometimes that I would get the smell of ammonia when I'd go into the sauna, and I was attributing to grain-fed beef, because and not the grass-fed beef. But here's what I found out, Brian. It's not the grain-fed beef and the grass-fed beef. I was eating this grain-fed beef when I was traveling. You see, it's topical microbes. I would travel and I would sit in airplanes and buses and whatever, trains and hotel lobbies and hotel beds. And I would pick up the microbes of unhealthy people. It would get on my body and it would produce this malodorous quality. It would all go away when I come back into my non-chlorinated water, climb into my bed, and the microbes from my previous microbiome in my bed would restore my microbiome, and I wouldn't get that ammonia. But prior to that happening, I would get this ammonia smell if I would sweat. So yeah, it's not the grass-fed beef versus grain beef. I just noticed that my diet frequently had to, take a little bit of a dip into the grain-fed conventional beef when I would travel. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting observation based on our first podcast discussing about that.
Yeah, it makes sense. And also, I want to get into the immune system and with the microbiome, because Karan Krishnan talked about that as well, and how we want healthy exposure to people, and how you mentioned we have this army of bugs that are helping us. So maybe you could talk about that. Yeah. I mean, he was saying he wants some healthy exposure to viruses because you can build immunity that way. You don't want to be shut away and everyone's on lockdown. And I'm interacting with people. I'm out. I'm traveling. I'm doing my
Yeah,
thing.
no, exactly.
And I feel great.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So, the herd immunity concept, that's discussed about COVID, is really based on the idea that the herd is as healthy as the collective microbiome that is shared and spread through that particular herd of animals. And the same thing applies to a Homo sapien herd, so families. And so you see these families that are really healthy, they pass more healthy microbes on. You see really unhealthy families passing unhealthy microbes on. So, just a stroll down the mall, you'll see children that are obese, and take a look at their parents, and they're obese. So they're sharing literally obesogenic microbes, from the parents to the children. They're passing it along, and these obesogenic microbes literally are contributing to obesity through an infectious model. So I help my clients to understand that infection and obesity and so much of chronic disease today is really an infection. It's an infectious process. And I think we have to adopt that kind of an approach to understand, the effective treatments and interventions and strategies we need to deal with to get rid of obesity and chronic disease is understanding the microbiome. And a lot of people shy away from it because it is complex and it is a black box. But why wait? Why are you going to wait for all that sequencing and understanding to start to be completely laid out for you, unless you are somebody that's what's called a late adopter? So if you're an early adopter, you figure out things quickly. Say, yep, I'm just going to start living my life better. It makes sense that these microbes exist and that they're good and bad. And life really is a report card of your microbes, how well you lived your life. So, you want to stay away from really bad things. Like I tell my kids, don't you ever sit in those enormous, super large wheelchairs in airports that push, people around that have all sorts of medical problems and are lazy, because those things are just a petri dish of nothing but, bad microbes, low performer microbes. You want to stay away from that. And what you probably want to be is the towel boy for the Olympic, some kind of Olympic training team.
Yeah. That's funny because, this might sound far-fetched to some people, but we do have studies of fecal transplants. When you actually transfer the microbiome and stuff like that into different people, there's a famous, I think it was in the rats, actually. I know we have human studies too of weight loss and weight gain from the microbiome transplant of fecal bacteria. But the famous one, the beast mice, right? The beast mice got into, or maybe you can just explain
both ways. It works both ways. FMTs, or fecal microbiota transplants, where you take a certain amount of feces and you place it into this is done. Most of the studies are being done in animal models because you can't do this in human beings except for one condition, Clostridium difficile. But so we can cause animals to become fat just by changing the microbes, introducing feces from fat mice and fat rats, and you could also cause them to be thin the same way. And they also they pick up the personality traits of the donors, which is very interesting. And one of my most interesting studies of all time is from the journal Science Advances, the February 9th edition, 2019 of Science Advances, where they took 50 rats and divided them in two groups of 25 each. One group got feces from normal humans. The other group of rats got feces from schizophrenics. And it caused the 25 rats that got the feces from schizophrenics to adopt schizophrenic, to start having schizophrenic traits. So they started behaving. Now, we can't diagnose rat schizophrenia the same way we do with humans, but they started behaving in schizophrenic ways. So literally, these microbes make contributions in far greater ways than we understand. And that in that particular model, they cleansed, they sterilized the gut. So they removed as much of the existing microbiome to leave them more vulnerable. But here's the point, Brian, and I hope your audience is listening to this. The healthier your microbiome in your gut is, that the better it is able to fight off bad microbes that may be causing schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. It may cause you to be less cognitively clear, less intelligent, less attractive, less able to fight off disease. All of these microbes, which we don't understand yet, play such a contributory role with our health that you really need to start thinking about your life as trying to collect as many, again, good microbes as you possibly can so that you can prevent yourself from getting the bad ones that you're always going to be assaulted with. So, you know, Oprah, if she understood that actually she lost all that weight, she's going to continue to be facing obesogenic microbes. Somebody could have worked with her and said, Oprah, you need to be eating lots of fermented foods and not destroying your microbiome through chlorinated water. She could have done some basic things, and she wouldn't have regained that weight so many times that she has. And basically, I think the poor lady now has kind of given up on diets. Mm-hmm. But you got to start with your health with the microbiome to understand that, so that if you're listening to this podcast and you're afflicted with cravings, that you cannot stop eating these bad foods, is because you have microbes down there that their survival is dependent upon those exact foods that you're having cravings for, and they influence it because they have to control their hosts to get the diet because they don't have access to that food otherwise. So they create stimulus for you to eat those foods, and the stimulus goes away the minute you eat that. But you won't have those cravings if you optimize your microbiome, continue to feed probiotic fermented foods to your gut so that these obesogenic and these craving producing microbes can't set up camp in your gut because you're exposed to them all day long. Every day of your life, you're exposed to them because they're in your environment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the food choice is the biggest factor. I just want to reiterate that because you talked about Oprah, and I mean, the food choice was the biggest factor. The microbiome is huge, but I mean, she was going on all these wacky diets, and that's why she's going up and down or eating processed foods. And also back to the people in the mall, you're talking about the obese family. They're sharing their microbiome, but they're also sharing their dietary habits. So we can't ignore that big thing. But maybe we should go to your photos.
Sure.
And start looking through some of those. So why don't you share your screen now? But I want to just let everyone know while he's doing that Dr. Sean is, how old are you?
I'm 57.
So you're 57. You look amazing. You're in great shape. We'll probably come across some of your photos along the way. You also have a law degree. You're in the Army. You're a law degree. You're a MD. You kind of do it all. How many pull-ups can you do?
Well, it depends on my particular day. I notice that if I'm coming off a fast and a refed, I can usually hit a good 20 to 25 pull-ups all the way down. So for a 57-year-old guy, full extension. So far,
real pull-ups.
Yep,
yeah,
I can out pull up anybody else so far in the Minnesota Army National Guard. All the young guys, so they're kind of shocked. And it's not like I do a lot of them. It's like, I can't even, I think it's probably been probably a month since I last did pull-ups, but yeah, it's a pretty cool little exercise. And you don't have to be really big to be highly functional. So it's always fascinating to me that the world's record weightlifter, the guy from Game of Thrones, he can't do a single pull-up. Super strong. But I tell my clients, if your goal is to gain muscle, it's going to be a little different game that we're gonna have to be playing here. But if you want to optimize your health, then this is what you need to do. So I work on not building muscle and use key biological indicators like the visceral fat that we can maybe see. If you can see, if I pull this up, are you able to see that screen?
Yep. We'll go back. Can you start? So you're talking about functional strength too. People shouldn't be so worried about their looks or getting tons of muscle mass. You should be worried about functional strength because that's what really matters. And guess what? If you focus on that, you will look good. You will have a good body composition. I mean, gymnasts are very functional, strength-oriented people, and they are known to have the best bodies, right? Like anyone wants a body, well, especially males, to have that gymnast body. They're perfectly muscled, they're ripped. It's great. So why don't you click on yourself? You have a side-by-side in the second picture.
Yeah, so this is a picture of myself back here. I'm about 46 years of age. I'm actually in the Army, and I have this big gut, and I also have a condition called sarcopenia. So anybody has got this protruding point, right? Pushing out right at the umbilicus, the belly button. This is from sarcopenia. That's beginning to degrade your muscle tonicity, the tone of your abdomen, and function out of that muscle to keep that your gut in. So it's more than just a lot of fat inside in that. It's low performing musculature here. And you can even build up these muscles, like, do huge six packs, or giant abdominis rectus muscles, doing a lot of abdominal musculature. And you still have this. You see bodybuilders with six packs and they're older, but the atrophy of that muscle makes it the tone, it just doesn't keep it in. So, and this is me this year, age 57 now, and I don't really exercise a lot. I typically probably exercise about, for my first 10 years, I'd exercise only about 5 minutes every 5 days. I mean, I barely exercise. And
we talked about that in the first episode, and you had a crazy story of this life or death struggle. But yeah, intense exercise for only 5 minutes for 5 days. And also, I'll put these photos in the show notes in case people don't ever get around to watching the YouTube version. But yeah, the left photo when in your 40s, classic dad bod, classic, out of shape, middle-aged guy. The one on the right, you look like a gymnast, just shredded, just look amazing.
Yeah, and the other thing I point out is this nice vein. So key to health is really nice, not only musculature but nice vasculature. So if you look at gymnasts and on Instagram and Twitter, they have fantastic veins because they're highly functional. I mean, they're functioning, high performing, and their appearance is good. But key to that is blood vessel flow, and you can see venous, a good vein right in that arm there. So yeah, it's super important to your health is how well you perform and the type of exercise you do. So somebody I used to know in the National Guard introduced me to gym rings and to calisthenics only in the past about 7 months. I've been doing those now, and I think they're fantastic. I mean, it's like the perfect COVID workout is to have gym rings. In fact, I'll show you my setup at my house. So I have these. This is my living room, and I have these gym rings hanging from my balcony in my 2-story family room. And I have these gym rings. They're out there right now. So I hit these things for a few seconds, probably 20 times a day, and they're available to me. They're ultra convenient, and they're super optimizing. So $39-$49 set of gym rings meet most of your exercise needs, along with sprinting. That you can start using in your house right away. So I love calisthenics, love gym rings. I'm glad you're a big fan of gymnasts.
Yeah, and I like this micro workout type of thing. I've been hearing more about this, and you can just do that many times a day, right? That's just more ancestrally appropriate, right? We didn't just do a workout. Like, this is my scheduled workout. You're always doing workouts. You're throwing rocks around, you're climbing things, you're throwing spears, whatever.
You can have these little, parallettes. I have some other ones right there, a little bit bigger parallettes on the table ring behind there. But these can be hung in the office. Here's what I'll predict, Brian. The offices in the future, maybe Google, maybe somebody's listening from Amazon, Google, Apple to this podcast, and they're thinking, what can we do to get our employees more healthy? Well, you need to have these kind of features that are attractive and ultra convenient in your offices, and you should be having them in your home. And one of the things I figured out, if you create, you and I have talked about this, but if you create gym equipment that's more attractive, visually attractive, people are more inclined to use it. So hitting these every day is a lot easier than clinking metal, silver, chrome, gross looking metal stuff that's less attractive. It's like unappealing food you don't want to eat as much. But if it's really attractive food, then you go in and eat it a lot more easier. That's the experience. So attractive gym equipment, I think, is one of those elements that you want to have around and use it frequently at your work. When you get a bad email or you get a stressful phone call or something bad's happening at work, hit your gym rings and knock that cortisol response. And I teach my clients, work with them to create these kind of healthy environments in their homes and in their offices where they work. So when they get chased by a tiger, a tiger shows up, they do some running and some fighting, and it knocks back the cortisol. We just accumulate cortisol all day long, and we don't have a way to decrease that cortisol. And gym rings and having these nice parallettes are a great way to do that.
I love that. And part of the attractiveness is that it's built in to your flow or your office or your home. And yeah, I mean, you don't have to get out a bunch of gym equipment, or it looks nice because it's integrated and it's not offensive to look at. So that helps because then it's always there. Right. So I think that's really huge, is because it's there, because it blends into your environment, you can keep it out. And if it's out, you're going to use it. So that's part of the attractiveness.
Exactly right. In my former days, I was a concierge physician to 52 billionaires. And we used to build all this super sophisticated, intensive ICU, high-level critical care equipment concealed within the walls of like their bedrooms and their yachts and underneath their homes and stuff. But we made it visually attractive with coverings, but we didn't have to use it all the time. We only use it like during a heart attack or stroke or a bad injury or something. We could get to it. But with gym equipment, you want to use it. You want to be able to, fitness needs to be incorporated into lifestyle. So it has to be out and it has to be attractive. So the gyms of the future are going to have attractive elements to it. And what they're going to mimic is nature. I mean, we function, perform well, and exercise the best and the purest in nature. And gyms are an artificial attempt to basically reproduce the hunter, experience inside a gym and to make us great. But it does it imperfectly through imperfect equipment and more steps in the right direction to make them attractive. And instead of just going to a gym for, an hour and a half workout once or twice a week, incorporating the equivalent of a natural gym into your lifestyle. So if you're out there listening, you got COVID in your home because COVID's going on, create your own natural gym in your home.
You're stuck in your home. Yeah. Why don't we go back and do those visceral fat images? Those are really interesting.
Let's take a look at visceral fat. Here's one. This is a great example. So you mentioned the guy that people run around and they're thin. So by way of orientation, so people can understand that this is the belly button in this region here, and these are the back muscles. Okay, so this person is laying down on their back. They're being scanned through their abdomen. There's a cross section through their abdomen, and in an MRI image, white appears as fat. So this is white on the outside in the periphery, and it's called subcutaneous fat. So if you ever wondered what your subcu fat is, you can pinch it. It's typical pinch an inch. And he could pinch an inch, so he didn't think he was that bad. This guy literally walked in laughing, joking around, thinking he was going to get a good report card. And when we scanned him, he is mostly fat. And the truth is, majority of people in America, if they're scanned, they will be mostly visceral fat, this highly inflammatory, destructive substance inside their body. So this guy, literally, after showing him how much visceral fat he had on, he passed out on me, completely unconscious, hit the ground, and scared the heck out of me. So that's
wow. So this guy actually passed out. So if,
the nurses come
I'll put
running
this
into my
link in the
office
show.
because they knocked over a chair and made all this noise. And I'm an ER doc, so I immediately went to my algorithms, like I said, I literally thought this guy was going to have a heart attack. And I still remember his face because he had a highly inflammatory face. And one of the interesting attributes of after scanning 4,000 people for visceral fat is I could read visceral fat in their faces. So now I associate, what a face looks like based with visceral fat. And so I can do mini scans on people just walking down the mall doing calculations. And when this guy walked in my office, I started stuttering. I'm like, oh my God, this guy is so bad. He could have a heart attack on me any minute. And then when he passed out, I'm like, oh my God, he is having a heart attack. So yeah,
Oh, no.
This guy really was filled with a lot of visceral fat. Now that's a bad example of or a person with a lot of visceral fat. Maybe this would be traditional.
Let me stop for a second. So I'm going to have to include this in the show notes, and I'll do an Instagram post, I guess, too, just to throw it out there, Twitter, whatever. But the entire inside of the picture was also white. You could see the subcutaneous fat, and it was a thin, it looked like a centimeter to an inch, or like a ring around. But then the entire middle of his body, you could see some organs in the back muscle there too, in darker color, but it's pure white almost.
Yeah. So this is his core. If you can see, this is the vertebral body, and if you ever wonder what the core looks like in a human being, this is his core. These two egg-like substances, a little bit of a kidney shown up here, and it gives you a little bit of an idea about human anatomy in his back. But he's mostly visceral fat. And again, he thought he was in good shape because he didn't have a lot of subcutaneous fat. But unless you get scanned, you really don't know. But in my YouTube channel, if you go to my Dr. Sean O'Mara YouTube channel, I have some demonstrations on how you can infer visceral fat by laying down and doing some interesting measurements. But the MRI gives us the best read. These MRIs are a series of 6 MRI scans over a course of 35 weeks. We paint the subcutaneous fat yellow, so you could it's kind of cautionary. You don't want to have too much subcutaneous fat. And then the visceral fat is red because this is stuff that's warning. This is what will kill you. You need to think of this as kryptonite. I mean, there's all these DEXA scan centers set up, and they tell people what a normal level is. Oh my God, there is no normal level. That's a disease level. You cannot think of a visceral fat as something that's normal. You don't want
just because it's typical in society doesn't mean it's normal for humans.
So it's normal existence, but you want to think of this as kryptonite. Get rid of it from your body. Week 0, this guy had 5.6 pounds of visceral fat, and he had a big streak of fat within his muscles and his oblique and transverse muscles. And in 2 weeks, look how much he dramatically reduced his size. Just in 2 weeks, his visceral fat is lower, and hopefully your audience can see that. And by the time, if they can, week 35, look at how much dramatic reduction he's had in his visceral fat. But Brian, what's interesting is this guy goes from here to here in 35 weeks, and all he did was cut out processed foods, cut out those processed carbohydrates. He didn't exercise 1 minute. So this is a very persuasive series of MRI scans to help people to understand you're wasting your time if you think you're going to exercise yourself out of an obesity problem. This guy goes from looking like a blob here, a barrel-chested 68-year-old CEO of a construction company that he was, to looking like a college athlete. And all he did was he got real serious about cutting out processed foods, because we have a lot of series like this, right? Scanning 4,000 people, I could just all day long show MRI scans, but this is a nice one. So, and look at the fat within his muscle. I mean, if you ever wonder why old people, their muscles are real shaky and they don't perform well and their muscles are weak. Well, they're
not dense.
All that fat in there, inflammatory fat within their muscle, and how much improves. So yeah, this is a nice series of visceral fat. Now, what also is an important marker that we track is something called pericardial fat. So this is a scan through the chest, and you can see fat around the heart that surrounds this area here. We painted red, and this is a marathon. And so he had a big chunk of fat. He's only 34 years old, and his MRI scan in his abdomen is this one. He has very little sub-Q fat, so he's your classic topi, thin outside, fat inside. So he ran 8 to 10 marathons a year and ate carbs and drank beer and thought he was fine because he had a six-pack and he had like no fat on his body, but he was filled with all this visceral fat. And until he got scanned, he didn't know that was what was inside of him. But
this is amazing. You have to see this. I'm gonna have to just cut this out and make little YouTube videos, and people can watch these individually, because that marathoner had just a few millimeters of subcutaneous fat. You can see it in yellow. What he said is we had it in white before, the fat was in white, and then these ones are painted yellow and pinkish red to show the difference. And so this marathoner, he was great. You know, all these people, they think they're slim, they think they're perfect, they're unstoppable. But once you get out the MRI and look at what's going on the inside, he was riddled with visceral fat.
Now here's another example of I've based on these experiences. One of the things we have learned is sprinting just eviscerates visceral fat. It just gets rid of it. So here's a guy who ran 10 miles a day, 5 times a week, 50 miles. He was a business executive, another CEO. He had a fair amount of subcutaneous fat and fat pads. And this was his second scan. His previous scan had slightly more visceral fat. He returns February 6, 2017, and he still has a persistent amount of visceral fat. I'm like, God, are you doing everything we told you to do? Cutting out carbs and eating a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet and ketogenic and blah, blah, blah. He's doing everything. And I said, there's something you're not doing. Did you stop running? Are you sprinting? He said, no, I'm still running. I said, well, stop your running. You got to stop running. I want you just to sprint. Trust me on this. So he goes, stops running completely. He's no longer doing 50 miles a week. He comes back in less than 2 months, gone. Look at that visceral fat, gone from doing sprinting. And look, his muscles got big. This guy came back with a six-pack. The only difference was,
you can see it. Less subcutaneous fat, more muscles, and almost no visceral.
This is why you noticed that big change seasonally when you started to sprint, Brian. If we'd done MRIs on you back then, you'd see that difference. So if you're listening to this podcast, please start sprinting. Cut back or even completely eliminate running and switch over to sprinting.
Well, distance running,
distance running. You want to do the sprinting. It makes a big difference. And by the way, let's look at this. These are two athletes. Okay, this one's an NFL client from the NFL. Happens to be a young 23-year-old. He has very little visceral fat and nice big obliques. He's got a six-pack, and his core is nice and big. Remember, the other guy's core was small. This is the psoas muscle down part of the core. And but look at this character. Look at this guy. His visceral fat is this little bit here. This is actually not visceral fat. This is retroperitoneal. That's around the kidneys. It's not in the abdomen, not around the viscera. This is his visceral fat, this teeny tiny bit of white there. But look at the massive muscles. This core, huge, way past. This is like the biggest core I've ever seen. And he's
And this is a sprinter? What is this?
Exactly. A wall-to-wall muscle. Now, here's a picture of this guy. And he's at Matati, if you want to follow him on Instagram. He's an awesome Olympic sprinter. And
how do you say that name?
Yeah,
what's
at Matadi? Matadi. So Emmanuel Matadi. And this is what he looks like. Now, he now lifts weights, but in this photograph, he wasn't lifting weights. He didn't do pull-ups or push-ups, didn't do weights. He got from his high school and younger years, just all training, just sprinting. The only thing he did was a sprinter, and it gave him this incredible amount of musculature. So if you sprint, pay attention to your biceps, your pectoralis majors. They all get pumped with blood, from the sprinting because it's so key. You're like using all your muscles when you sprint, and that's why it just perfected his body. So gymnasts have great bodies, and so do sprinters. So it's
Sprinters.
a really, really great.
So and just like so, he gave you permission to share.
He did. He's a great guy. Really wonderful person. Give him a follow, watch him, and root for him. He's a great, dedicated athlete. Absolutely, just phenomenal athlete. And these are his Matati's legs. This is his femur, and this white here. Remember, the fat is the bone marrow, and that shows you how bone marrow has fat. But look how efficient this guy's legs are. He has like no subcutaneous fat. That's why his muscles just pump out. He looks like a bodybuilder. But yeah, these are beautifully defined legs. So we do a lot of fat to muscle ratios on our MRIs to track the ratio of fat to musculature to how people optimize. But I mentioned my veins in my picture and how important vasculature is, and this would be a good time to segue. When we scanned 4,000 people, Brian, in our medical research practice, and we got that visceral fat to go away, and we tracked how other disease manifestation, chronic disease went away, we took all the results to the National Science Foundation, including this image I'm going to discuss here. But it was because patients were reporting when they got rid of visceral fat that their memories improved and that they said, we're getting smarter. We're processing information better as executives of companies. What is it about visceral fat that makes us smarter? Why am I getting smarter? So we just started to scan the brain to figure that out. And here's what we found. So these are cerebral arteries, brain arteries coming up, and these are the carotid arteries. And this outlined, this one right here is the middle cerebral artery right on the right side. Now, it's all dark to right this point there, and then it gets hazy. And that's because that has some atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease in it, basically, plaques. Or what I call schmutz in the pipe. So the pipe is no longer pushing blood as cleanly through because it's less patent, less clean. But look at this circle area here. There's a lack of blood, present being able to be picked up in this.
It's a gap.
It's a huge gap. Now,
why don't you zoom in? Press that plus sign on the top left. See the zoom in button on the top or middle.
Yeah.
Okay, zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, so let's make that a little bigger. So, yeah, good call. So now you can see that blood does get through here in the distal portion, but it's not present here because all that basically has been replaced with plaque. Now, this is the number one site for stroke, or the middle cerebral arteries. And so patients would come in, we would see this, and this guy came back in 9 months. We opened up this one. And we opened up this one by following our interventions. I give people basically about 25 things to do to work on, starting with diet all the way to lifestyle and fasting and high intensity exercise like sprinting and gym rings. And it opens these arteries up. So it's a great marker to follow is getting these MRIs. And, people, it's sad because, this is brand new stuff, these scans happen all the time in the ER, and all I would report as an ER doctor, what the radiologist would have said, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease noted within the cerebral vasculature. So we just tell the patient, you got clogged arteries in your brain, you got to go talk to your primary care doctor. And then I talk to these primary care doctors, you know what they would do with these patients? They just start them on statins. Well, those lesions never go away with statins. You want to go away, you got to start doing, changing your life. So,
well, they also put them on a low-fat diet with processed foods, and it's just going to get worse.
So if you're watching this podcast and you're interested in getting this done, and if you're able to come to Minneapolis, I can get these scans done at a center. Sadly, we had to close our MRI scanner up because of COVID, but I can send people to a research center up here that does them for $400, and you can get this scan done and track your arteries. And this would be far better to track your visceral fat and your arteries than cholesterol. So spend your money on tracking things that are really meaningful. And that's why these people were getting smarter. Their memory is improving. and their veins were popping on their arms, and pulses became visible. You could see people's pulses in their wrists, and even their veins in their wrists are now starting to pulse. My veins in my wrists pulse because the blood flow through my arteries, through my capillary bed, and then into my vein are so wide open that you can see my venous pulsations in my arms. And now it's happening to my clients as I've gotten them to do the same thing. So super important vascular. This is my favorite study to take a look at. And we repeated it several times. And I'll be doing a publication with at Morea Ortho. It was Dr. Carlos Morea on Twitter and Instagram. He and I are going to publish this series on that particular individual, so it gets published, and other people, hopefully physicians, will start tracking those and start using the MRI to not treat people, but to actually optimize them and reverse the disease process instead of trying to look for ways to optimize people. So that's a really cool study. And the other interesting thing I'll share out there as a picture is that this is a cut on my leg, on my body. All my scars have turned white. When they come in, they turn white. Most of your scars, if you look at them, but a few people that I know is coming into the ER that were unusually healthy looking had purple scars. This kind of look, and now I'm very pleased to report that when I get a cut and I get an injury, my scars are coming in purple now instead of white. And a picture of that is a soldier. See his cut on his lip. Very healthy soldier, and you can tell he's pretty hua looking. Looks like
a GI Joe.
Yeah, he looks like kind of like a GI Joe. So, and it's interesting. Science tells us that women are attracted to what's called noble scars. So, and the reason is biology suggests to them that they're alphas. They're out front doing what they're supposed to do. And so the alphas have more scars and more prominent scars. And so women are attracted to these more prominent purplish scars than white scars. So for the radio, for your podcast audience that are really into optimizing your health, just watch for your scars to start turning, not your existing scars, but new injuries you get will turn purple. My existing scars still are white, but now my new cuts and new injuries are coming in purple.
I did notice that I had a cut, maybe it was from beach volleyball, and it is purple. We've never talked about this yet, so that's pretty amazing.
Brian.
And why is it purple though? What is it?
So the reason is increased pigmentation, but that purpling to me manifests, and you'd have to do histological exams on that. Angiogenesis. So what I think is happening is you're getting increased blood flow. And that increased blood flow is the rich vasculature that is being newly laid down in that scar. Now, what's interesting is scars actually are stronger than non-scar tissue. But the other unknown fact that a lot of people don't know about scars is young people who are healthy scar, but guess who don't? Old people. Old people don't scar. So they come in, they have total degloving injuries in the ER. Their whole skin is ripped off, because it's just so thin and unhealthy. Gets ripped off, goes right back, you can't even see it. It's crazy. So old people don't scar, young people do. And so nature wants you to be able to come back stronger. And nature also says it's a sign of resilience in the high performers. So that's why we're attracted to those kind of scars. So yeah, the purpling makes it more prominent, and it shows off what I think is really just new collateral blood flow, new blood vasculature laying down there. It's all blood flow, blood flow, blood flow, blood flow. So paralleling these purple scars, and you should look, Brian, for venous pulsations in your wrist. If you can see your veins are starting to pulse, and whether you can see visible pulses. My brachial artery, my camera on my laptop never shows the resolution, but I'm pulsating, a brachial arterial pulse here. venous pulsations in my left wrist. And you have to raise your wrist up to be able to see these, so that basically it's improving the venous flow, but going down. The arteries can still perfuse blood up against gravity, but venous pulsations are best. This is the Sean O'Mare technique. Is best achieved when you bring your.
Oh, I can't see the video anymore.
Oh, but. So anyway, look for your veins and see if they start. If they're not pulsating yet, they will eventually. As you continue to optimize your body, you'll get arterial pulses. You'll see veins. You'll see, and then another interesting thing is fingers puckering. My fingers now pucker just like my kids used to in bathtubs, and when I was a kid, when I go swimming, my fingers would pucker and get all wrinkly.
Oh, the wrinkly.
Yeah. Now that's happening to me. When I use my sauna, wash dishes, go into take a short shower, and it would take used to take like I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes, to be exposed to moisture. Now it's happening sometimes as fast as 2 or 3 minutes. My fingers will pucker up because the blood flow is so good, and it's neurologically mediated. So if you cut, people may not be aware of this, but if you cut the ulnar nerve, which innervates the pinky and the ring finger, and you dip your hand in water and a child goes into the bathtub, only the other 3 fingers that the nerve was not cut, that innervates, will pucker, and the other 2 don't pucker at all. So it's neurologically mediated, and the fact that we don't pucker anymore as adults, the average person, is simply because of chronic disease, deterioration of our nerves, nerve functioning. And no wonder, we can't balance ourselves when we get older. We have super poor balance, and we get dizzy all the time, and we can't feel things, and we talk really slow. Our central and peripheral nervous system, we walk slow, because our nerves are falling apart as our muscles are falling apart because of chronic disease, because I think a large part is all driven by our bad lifestyle. But the common factor that's working through is a disrupted microbiome. So you improve the health, improve your microbiome, your nerves function better, your arteries and veins function better, your vasculature, and your appearance and performance then are significantly enhanced. So in the future, I'll predict will be older people that look extraordinarily healthy and extraordinarily high functioning. Professional athletes in the future will become much older. They'll have the benefits of decades of playing the sport over the younger people, and they'll regain their youthful physiological, biological skills, and they'll be the very best athletes. Will be the real old guys.
I believe it. I mean, I'm thinking about Frederick, the Sami reindeer herder who I had on the show. He was up in the Arctic Circle, and he talked about his grandpa who was 95 and went on a 20-mile cross-country ski trip to say hello to his friend 20 miles away, and cross-country skied back. And then he just died 2 weeks later. And he was still highly functioning, strong, all the things at this advanced age, and then you just die. And this is what happens. I mean, yes, his body gives out at a certain point, but we didn't wither away. We didn't have, the old, like you're saying, this old person stuttering and falling down and shaking and loose skin and all these things. This is not how we're supposed to be.
No. And so you want to live. It's basically not only how long you live, but your quality of life. And that's the biggest change is that in the past, we didn't live as long because of trauma. There was a lot more aggressive lifestyles that we had, but our quality of life was much higher. Everybody enjoyed a much higher improved health span, where they were just healthier for their whole length of their lives. And today's complete opposite. We get people living really long, but their health span is terrible. The quality of health that they have is very brief early on, and then quickly accumulate chronic disease because of cereals and processed foods and grains and sugars and carbs and poor lifestyle choices, and don't know how to exercise, don't know how to fast, don't know how to sleep. And we end up being just a hot disaster. So we can educate people through your podcast and through social media, because you're not going to get this through conventional health. Don't go to your doctor and expect your doctor is going to be able to get you healthy. I mean, they just will treat disease. And maybe I'll make that one point is that, what's the difference between the doctors today and the doctors of old from 50,000 years ago, the medicine man or the medicine woman? Here's the difference. Why are the doctors so bad today and the medicine men presumably were much better? And here's the difference. This is my own observation. I've never heard anybody talk about this, but the medicine man of the past, he or she had a vested interest in the outcome of everybody's health. In other words, when he told the leader of the alpha of that clan to do this or that, or the other hunters to do this, that, his livelihood was dependent upon giving them the best information so that they performed the best, because if they didn't go out there and were successful in the hunt, the medicine man would suffer and maybe die because of lack of food. So he had what's called skin in the game, right? So it's a business concept. You go into business, you want everybody to have skin in the game, so they're all working for a common outcome. There is no skin in the game from your doctor. His skin in the game is making money off your disease and hoping, basically, I don't want to say this, but basically hoping that you continue to keep coming back and get more medicines and more procedures and more billable revenue generating units for their practice. So the skin in the game today, we're not going to make success through doctors unless they have a vested interest in your outcomes. So I am willing to work with clients. They're very interested. I've got some skin in the game. I want to completely commit, have some commitment to your outcome. If you're a real true alpha, I'd love to work with you. Get some skin in the game, to show we're going how much committed I am to get people to really optimally perform. Because I'm really looking for some high-end alphas to go out and be the best influencers for health and get that within their organization and sphere of influence to get even more people. The less alpha type people, beta, zetas, and things all the way down, they don't influence as many people. And time is short. We got to save some lives. So in the ER, we try to save lives, but in this realm of prevention and optimization, we've got to influence the influencers so they go out and try to get as many people as possible optimizing their health.
Yeah, this is so great. And not only is the incentives monetarily not aligned, but they don't care. Your doctor has it doesn't matter to them at all, your health outcome, because we're not in the tribe anymore.
Yeah.
So not only does the money not matter to them because they're just getting money from the insurance companies, but it doesn't affect them because you're just a random person in a sea of people.
They don't care if you perform bad or good. They don't care.
Yeah. Well, we need to just realign the incentives. And we did do some content on this. Some people are talking about this. And I talked about with Dr. Gary, or actually talked about with Dr. Brian Lenzikis, on switching the model around where you are incentivized to keep people healthy. And I mean, it's just a cash-based system. For one thing, is you just have to go outside the insurance model, and you just know the patient has to, or client has to pay you. And if you don't have good results, they're not going to pay you anymore. So you don't have this middleman of the insurance company paying you no matter what. Or there's an even better method of maybe even you don't pay if you don't do better, or you pay a monthly fee and you're incentivized. If it's a flat rate, maybe this is not what you do, but I'm saying you could do is that if someone's coming in 7 times a month because you're not doing a good job, then it's a burden on you. So you want them to do well and not come in so often. So you have an incentive as a doctor to treat them better and have them not in your office taking up your time.
You're exactly right. So these are all the concepts that we need to be talking about and figuring out so that we can get providers. Because I don't want to just walk away from these physicians. They're super smart people. They just unfortunately don't know, and they're in a business model that's wrong. But kind of like my idea, one of the things I'm thinking about is not getting paid. What I would do is, because how do you work with somebody that maybe they claim to be an alpha, but then they don't do everything you tell them to do, and you spend all this time and they don't really improve their performance, and you've wasted your time. So here's my idea is you're going to pay me, but if you don't get good results, I donate the money you gave me to charity. So it's almost like I didn't get paid, right? So I'm motivated to get you to become awesome. And you're invested in this because you paid that money and you want to get that outcome.
And you're not getting it back. Because yes, that solves a problem, because some people who are less than honest would just claim that they didn't have good results and then get their money back.
That's how I prevent that from happening. They're going to pay for it, but it goes to charity if they don't do that. And you know what? If they don't like that idea about me taking the money they pay and they want their money back, they're not charitable. Guess what? I don't want to work with them, because that's not an alpha. Because the alphas have passed, true alphas, they came back and they shared that meat, and they shared it with people that really needed it, like the weapons maker, who was a former, very grievously injured hunter, was one of his, maybe their best hunters, and he got really injured, and now he makes the weapons. Well, he deserves that food, and they were very, very charitable. So I am really looking for, if you're somebody that's a really amazing person, I'm very charitable. I'd be willing to help you if you do awesome things. I'd be willing to help you for free just to continue to do really awesome things, because I'm just into charitable things. And I love doing it. I do free lectures and free programs for the vets, for law enforcement, for first responders, and to the military, because I'm just really into charity. I operate in a not-for-profit model in my medical practice, and because I think we're too driven for profit. And, I took care of 52 billionaires. I know the way billionaires live. I know their lifestyle, and I don't want anything to do with that kind of a lifestyle. I need money, but not that bad. And it does, unfortunately, it makes you not want to go out and hunt and gather. If you got that kind of money, you just want to sit around and eat Snickers. And that's what my clients did on their yachts. Jelly beans and Snickers and beignets and all sorts of tasty pastries. And it's not a lifestyle to optimize your body. And they die from the same strokes and heart attacks that, the more marginalized and less affluent in society suffer from as well. So they get better health care, surgeries and things, but ultimately they get the same disease and if not more of it, because of their gluttonous lifestyles.
Absolutely. Here, why don't you go out? Do you have any more photos? And while we kind of wrap this up, I want to keep this going. I'm moving to Austin. I've been talking about it. I've been talking to you about getting out to Texas possibly in the next 6 months, a year, whatever. We got to start this up. We're going to do a facility in Austin, a health facility. We're going to integrate all the things you talked about, even the outdoor working out, or attractive workout equipment, all kinds of stuff. I want to know if we can get a hold of an MRI machine or how that would work. I know they're really expensive, but how can we get this going?
Yeah, well, I have some ideas about that. MRIs, you might be able to get one like ours. We sold ours really cheap. So you just have to have a business model where people understand it, stop using it for treatment and start using it. You could literally get a scan every other day and we'd see changes in visceral fat in 2 days on an MRI scan. So, but yeah, we'll talk about that. But maybe this last one photograph is kind of a fun one to talk about. This one I recently found out about. This photograph on the left, obviously the same person. The time difference is just 7 days. So if your audience can see that there's a big difference. And one thing is, look how his eyes are whiter. I mean, it's and his eyes look whiter to me too, and his skin looks better perfused, like it's got better blood flow, and he's lost a lot of inflammation. And so what happened in 7 days between this guy is he just fasted. This is a 7-day fast, and this guy, I saw it on YouTube, and I did screenshots because he didn't do a side by side. He just talked about it and had some photographs. This is me starting, and he worked his way through it. But I think the side by side is important to take a look at. So if you're somebody who's never done some extended fasting, 7 days is really not that much. Our ancestors certainly would have gone longer than just 7 days at times. And so if you're somebody that has never fasted, you've only gone like only an hour or two without eating, you really need to start looking at the benefits to fasting and consider doing it, because who do you want leading your tribe? Who do you want up there in the fight? You want this guy or do you want this guy? So
Well, yeah.
it's obvious to me.
Oh yeah, one guy just looks like some Joe Schmo off the street, and one guy looks like he's in, some advertisement as like a model.
Yeah.
Maybe, their faces are completely different, and you can achieve this in different ways too. You can live an ancestral lifestyle or do all the things we're talking about, and just maybe it'll take longer, right? You can do this over the course of months, or you do it with a 7-day fast, but just know that it's possible.
Yeah. And if what's good is all the good decisions you make, Brian, are compounded to, over a course of days, months, years, lifetime, to make you more awesome. That's why I think, the older people are going to be just fantastic. And if you eliminate the bad decisions, they get compounded too. So, if you're out there, somebody thinks you can cheat one time, you're only doing the calculation based on the math of that immediate quantified detriment that you think is happening just from that one thing, rather than extrapolating it out in a compounded model where it just continues to build up. So, but yeah, the appearance changes so much, and I changed my clients so much that I went to a modeling agency and said, hey, we're looking for different ways to work with different companies, different organizations. Like we started off with firefighters and police officers, and they just weren't very, motivated to improve their appearance or performance. And I thought, well, maybe models would be. So I thought we could get the modeling agency to send models in, but the modeling agency said, well, we don't really, it's terrible, but they said, we're not really interested in improving the appearance of our models when they no longer look good. We just get new ones, and because the turnover is good. But they ended up hiring me. So I'm an older guy, and so I do modeling now. And I never thought it would be a model, but it is kind of interesting. It gets me into some interesting organizations and opportunities to promote appearance. And I have a lot of modeling friends now that I help them out improve their appearance with recommendations too. So you and your audience will all be models in the future, because everybody else is aging and getting worse in their appearance, and you are getting more attractive and you're performing better. So this is the future, as long as you are living your life correctly. So it's a really exciting future when you live your life correctly.
It's so true. Why don't you turn back on your video for this last few minutes? There we go. Yeah. There's that model face. So in the last few minutes here, there's a few more things we can discuss. I just wanted to talk about sprinting, because I changed my sprinting habits. I was doing, say, 10 to 12 really short sprints, and now I'm doing these long sprints. I'm doing 150 meters. Because I was a track athlete. I was a football player and track athlete. And when you do track workouts, they are hard workouts, and you will sprint. A 400 meters is one of the hardest things you could ever do. It's an all-out sprint for an entire lap. And basically humans, you seem to run out of glycogen stores really at around 300 meters. So you're doing the last 100 meters with nothing left. You feel like you're going to die, and you keep going. But I'm not going to do that every week. But I've just moved to 4 150-meter sprints, and I feel way better. I feel like I worked way harder when I was doing 10 to 12, say 40-meter sprints.
Yeah, so I mix it up, and probably the most I will do is right about what you're saying about 150. It's between 100 and 150 that you deplete your glycogen, and so I think there's something to that. But sometimes every once in a while, we'll do a 400-meter sprint, a little bit longer. I'm not obviously big on distance running anymore, and sometimes I do really short sprints and do them very frequently throughout the day to break up stress. But the idea is variety, and you want to mix it up and start slow and accelerate to maximum speed. And I have, if anybody wants to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, I have on, especially my Instagram account, content about getting started on sprinting. You can just follow me at Dr. Sean O'Mara, at DrSeanomara. And there's lots of tips on sprinting and a lot of interesting posts about sprinting, because the two things I think we need to do is sprint and fight. Can't go out and do bar fights today, but gymnastics and weightlifting in a very intense, short period of time can emulate fighting, and it really optimizes the body. But especially getting started in that optimal diet. Stop eating the bad stuff. Start eating the good stuff. Respect your body as your most important physical asset.
I love it. We have a few more minutes. Maybe we'll just go over a few more things. You had some notes here if you want to look at those. Or I had a listener question about blood flow restriction training.
Yeah, so I can.
Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so I do BFRs. I think they're very interesting. My analogy to BFRs is sort of like training at altitude. It's a kind of a resilience form of resilience or hermetic practice, where it basically it makes puts your arms and your legs into a more challenging condition. So we are using them in the. Now I don't want to speak on behalf of the military, so let me change that. They're being used in the military and special operations. They're being studied because they really do improve performance. And there's studies out there that show that sprinters who sprint with BFR bands end up producing more muscle and increasing their speed doing the exact same exercise that sprinters who don't use them. So I will say that they really should be considered. If you're somebody who's interested in performing, I absolutely recommend you take a look at BFRs, and I have some postings on them on my Instagram account. Brian, I'm going to have to go because I've got a hard stop at 2:00. I got a bolt for, but
yeah. Why don't we do it for the bonus episode for the Sapien Tribe? We can do the last couple minutes here, and thank you so much. It's been another great episode, and hopefully we can connect in Austin.
Yeah, well, I really want to get to Austin. This is such a happening town, and all the key people are moving to Austin because it's a great environment. It's got a great vibe, and it's got a great climate. So I'm excited to make the move from the wintry North Tundra of Minnesota down to sunny, warm Austin.
All right. Well, I'm going to help get you there, whatever I can do. Thanks so much, and see you next time.
Okay, Brian, thank you very much for being with you and your audience and your great podcast.